It all starts in the heart of chaos, in this strange land called the Dyson Dynasty. Deep in the imperial palace, the emperor kicked the bucket, and the most incompetent family member took the throne. Ill-mannered, ignored by everyone, and a total loser, our new ruler's name was Tui. Actually, it wasn't him, but his other brother who should have been the heir to the throne. But thanks to corrupt politicians playing dirty games, he was appointed to this position simply for being a useful idiot. Our hero, scratching his head, wondered why the universe played such a trick on him, and why he had become such a massive loser. And yet, this man was teleported here from that simple life, where he spent his days editing videos of dancing girls. It wasn't that he loved the job, but everything changed because of that damn message appearing on his laptop. A window suddenly popped up on the screen, asking which dynasty I wanted to go to. Ours thought this was the stupidest question in history. He started an internet war, acting like a keyboard warrior and screaming that the past was a total dump. There were no discounts, no technology, and zero comfort. It was a place where everything was hard, where you could die from a simple illness, and most importantly, where there were no girls dancing on screens. But now, he sat upon the throne he once despised. He wondered if this was some cosmic joke. This man, who hated nepotism, had now become the leader of the very wretched world he once mocked. But suddenly, the bracelet on his arm began to glow with an ominous light. A mechanical voice whispered that it was an AI system named Ben. He could call her Ben-Shan if he wanted. Our hero jumped up. Clearly, he was still a rookie at this reincarnation and system business. The system wasted no time in assigning his task, and it was actually quite simple. All he had to do was let the Dajson dynasty crumble to the ground. If the country were completely destroyed, he could return to his own world. Meanwhile, the bear, standing aside with her white hair, was trying to figure out what this useless man was up to. The man who usually grinned at her like a fool in love had an eerie vibe today. Tuyai turned his head, wondering who this woman was and what she was about. Various traits and numbers began to flutter across an interface that suddenly appeared in his mind. The system snitched that this woman was one of his concubines, but her real purpose was to spy on him. Our hero could now see everyone's stats on the path to his goal. According to the system report, her name was Xiao Shu, and her whole reason for being was just to spy on our boy. The woman noticed the change in the man's gaze and sensed something was wrong. Stroking his chin, Tuyai realized this breathtaking beauty was actually a deadly trap. The woman was only there to watch him, but his devilish charm was undeniably strong. Xiao Shu was starting to feel anxious deep down. Could this foolish king have seen through his flawless disguise and seen his true face? Just then, someone else called out to him. The long-haired man who appeared beside him noticed the emperor looked distracted and asked what was on his mind. But Tuyai was aware of the danger. This man must have been one of those traitors eyeing the throne. According to the stats appearing before his eyes, the man's IQ was 94, a total genius and a devil. The person before him was the prime minister of the Daishan dynasty. It was clear as day that he was one of the architects behind the plan that seated Tui on that throne. Their goal was to make him a puppet they could control. Standing nearby was another minister, Zhao Zui, who possessed blood power and immense influence. Besides, this man was the father of our beautiful spy, Xiao Xiu. While she tried to figure out why the emperor was acting so strange today, he was stuck staring at the massive attribute points these guys had. Then Zhao Zui gestured something to her. He asked if she was worried about her throne being shaky. But Tui replied like a total troll, saying he actually wanted the throne to be shaken. He even hinted that he wished for the whole country to disappear soon, if possible. Zhao Xiu was amazed by this response to her father's provocation. The woman thought the emperor should be uneasy because of his brother, Hu Xiu, who was the rightful heir to the throne. Because his brother was out there leading the army. Tui now understood much better why she was put in that seat and how these men manipulated the situation. Minister Zhao reminded him that they had committed a grave crime by defying the laws and the imperial decree. They broke the rules by putting this child on the throne. He even went as far as striking the dead emperor's coffin, claiming the man inside was no longer a threat. The coffin wouldn't open, and the dead emperor couldn't kill them. That's why they were relaxed. But the same wasn't true for Tui. Besides, news of the death hadn't spread yet. Showing the green seal in his hand, he told them to hurry up so his brother could die and join the former emperor. Toei finally felt the pieces falling into place. They wanted him to use the imperial seal to command the entire country. This way, he'd have his brother killed and eliminate the risk of losing the throne. Even if he were king of everything in this scenario, he'd remain a puppet for those two snakes forever. It was pathetic for this plot to be set before the bodies of the emperor's two most trusted men had even gone cold. But Toei didn't want to be a part of this nonsense drama. Plus, he had a stunningly beautiful agent to deal with and look out for. He was thinking about how to get out of this chaotic situation. His eyes were caught by the green seal in Zhao Zuo's hand. In a quick reflex, he reached out and snatched the seal from the man's hand. He thought this guy wouldn't be able to control it so easily. The man shouted in surprise, asking what Toei was trying to do. Our hero knew that if he died, the Dyson dynasty would fall into chaos, allowing him to complete his mission and return home. She boldly placed her hand on Zhao Zuo's face and said as long as she held the seal, she would decide who lived and who died. Zhao Zan was in shock. He hadn't even imagined she could be this brave, that she would defy her father like that. She was horrified and chilled to the bone by the man's audacity. Maybe that foolish behavior he's shown so far was just a perfect camouflage. And now that the imperial seal was in their hands, the real game was beginning. Drunk with power, this man Zhao Zong is defying the emperor. He stands tall as if saying, "Know your place, son," even before taking the throne. "I'm the one who put you in that seat." While he's making threats about taking it down, our crazy Chu Yin's response is shocking. "Come on, kill me." Ours sees the 77 combat points above the guy's head. So he knows he'll finish the job in one shot. Just as the guy is about to move, the other one, bloodthirsty, grabs our man by the throat to choke him, but his daughter steps in, begging, "Dad, stop, don't do it!" Right in the middle of that chaos, that sly fox Chen Yuan steps in. He softens the mood by saying, "Calm down, guys, we're all in the same boat." Would you just stand by? Since you're so calm, he makes that move to stir things up, saying, "Let me drive you crazy too." The moment Chen Yuan flinches, that sacred green seal is shattered. Zhao Zan screams like he's actually in pain, while our guy pulls an Oscar-worthy performance, acting like, "Oops, it just slipped out of my hand." What absolute nerve. That broken piece of stone. It actually represents the entire Qian dynasty's honor, dignity, and absolute authority. Without him, the emperor's command is nothing but a whisper. In this universe, the penalty for harming such a sacred thing is clear. Death, in the most painful way. Ours wants exactly this. They have a death wish. Seeing these big shots lose their temper and Chen Yuan fuming with rage, the poor fools cheering as if the Grim Reapers just knocked on the door. But Chen Yuan is struggling so hard to suppress his urge to kill, his veins are practically bursting. Just as Zhao Zuo is about to charge in shouting, "Enough!" Chen Yuan grabs his hand at the last second and stops him, saying, "Wait, don't do it!" Our Majesty is joking, dear. He owns the entire world. Does it matter if a tiny piece of stone is broken? He says, trying to save the situation. They're trying to escape by saying what's broken is broken, let it be, closing the subject, and using the late hour as an excuse to talk tomorrow. Just as they're turning tail to flee, our guy shouts from behind, "Hey, where are you going? You're not finished with me yet." He's screaming that everyone is equal before the law and demands his head be cut off, but they just ignore him and walk away like he's talking to a wall. Disgraceful. Scene change. Behind closed doors, Zhao Zuo is fuming. "We need to get rid of this brat fast or he'll be trouble." Chen Yuan asks in a cold voice, "Can you pay the price for taking that kid down?" And the other one immediately labels him a coward, while complaining about still calling him "Your Majesty." Their friend hits them with a reality check. "Don't be stupid. With Tusa and his army waiting outside, if we touch Shuye, an investigation will start, and we're all dead. When that seal broke, we lost our biggest trump card. Now our only refuge is keeping him on the throne, or it's our heads." Zhao Zuo looks like a sitting duck. So this brat broke the seal just so we wouldn't kill his brother? Think he's that smart? Chen Yuan is confident. Breaking the seal definitely tied our hands. That jackal put his brother under protection. They used to fight over taste, but now he wears the crown. He wants to stay on good terms with Tusu and consolidate his power. If we push the boy too hard, He'll make a deal with Tusu, march that massive army to the capital, and crush us like flies. Then all our plans will fail, and our dreams of power will go to the grave with us. So you see, Chui has now established a three-way balance of power. Our paranoid vizier says she's got everyone wrapped around her finger. Zhao's would burst out laughing. No way, you've lost your mind. And that wimp walks around with a brain capable of such clever planning. But Qin Yuan's evidence is solid. Remember. He said the emperor and the people are equal before the law. The legendary Grand Vizier Wei Singla was the last person to say this, 100 years ago. The guy's literally giving us a history lesson. That Grand Vizier rose to the top with the emperor, but when he fell from grace, the poor man was torn apart and thrown into the streets. Choosing that story, which fits our current situation perfectly, can't be a coincidence. This is a clear message. This is a threat. Zhao Zhuo is still being stubborn. I won't bow down to that brat relying on his big brother. Seal or no seal, I'm sending assassins after that Otusa guy to kill him. Qin Yuan watches silently. And inside, he thinks, we crowned him because he seemed the purest and easiest, but now he's just trouble. Yeah. Then suddenly he starts laughing like a maniac. The late emperor sure left some tough sons behind. Well done. The scene turns back to the boy who's supposed to be a genius strategist. Don't think he's sleeping soundly, he's just fed up with life. The food tastes like cardboard. Games are boring. And the music playing is ear-piercing. This isn't palace life, it's a torture camp, for heaven's sake. He can't decipher what he's reading. There's nothing to watch. No internet. No phone. His tech-addicted body is in revolt. I'm just going to die of boredom. Then he notices the beauty appearing beside him. Xiao Shu, let's call him this for short, just so his dad doesn't get him mixed up with that annoying Zhao. The poor girl is shaking, turning beet red from embarrassment. As your servant, I must stand guard in your bedroom. When she says that, blood suddenly rushes to his cheeks. That suicidal tendency just vanishes into thin air. The guy who just said this world sucks is leaving. Right away, some creep shows up, saying, this place is paradise. Time passes, and our boy forgets all about game consoles and smartphones. Starting to enjoy life. And I thought this lazybones was gonna sleep all day, but look at him stretching and stuff. Then his eyes fixate on that strange clip in the girl's hair. Ours had already begun to dream that this madness was the perfect ticket back to his own world. While pouring himself a drink, he suddenly dropped a bombshell, mentioning Xiao Shun's name and asking if she was a spy planted by her father. The girl's expression crumbled instantly. She panicked, whispering to herself that it was impossible for her to be exposed. Though he stuttered slightly in feigned ignorance, the emperor said he didn't care at all about his relationship with Xiaogua. He took a sip from his glass and turned around. And he admitted knowing for a fact that she was placed there to spy on him. He added that he loved this game of cat and mouse they played, because without these intrigues, the empire would be deathly boring. But the girl was trembling with fear. She wondered how long he'd known and if revealing it now meant he was bored with this game. The emperor took another sip of wine, said it was really kicking in, then collapsed on the table, faking an Oscar-worthy faint. Thinking this was a rare opportunity for her, Xiao Shu slowly began to remove the hairpin. Now that her identity was revealed, she was a pawn past her expiration date for both the emperor and her stepfather. The only way for him to save himself was to end this once and for all and get his hands bloody. As he approached slowly, our guy was humming a cheerful tune. But just then, the system sent a message about the point goal. These scores were based on political, economic, military, and cultural values reflecting the success of the Chan nation. The mission would be complete once the nation's total value fell below 0, and it was starting with 1,000 points. And that's our little goofball right there. With horror, he realized that if he died now, his mission would not be considered complete. The problem was, she had already closed in and aimed for his throat. And our guy didn't want to die in such a ridiculous way. Even if she felt tested, she couldn't miss this chance. He took the risk and made a move, but right then ours turned around and grabbed his wrist. A tear rolled down the girl's cheek as she thought she had fallen victim to the man's games once again. And the guy said he got off easy. But the girl pulled the hairpin free and shouted that she still had a chance. Until he stupidly tripped and fell flat on his back. While the girl was crying out of frustration, he found it ridiculous that she tried to assassinate him with a combat power of only 44. He grabbed the hair tie and said she got way too excited over a few words. Raising his chin, he told her to her face that a qualified spy shouldn't behave so amateurishly. The poor girl was crying, thinking her assassination mission had failed. Suddenly he woke up in a different place, wondering where he was. Someone approached and asked if the assigned task had been completed. When she turned around, she saw her stepfather. The man held out his hand, saying if he couldn't even handle a simple task like this, he had to be punished. The girl woke up next to Twin with a scream. The man asked if this was a nightmare. The girl wondered if he was going to kill her. The emperor stood up and reminded him he'd already said he wouldn't kill him, but would instead let him keep playing this game and delivering the messages. After all, that's what made everything more interesting. The girl then prepared the ink and began writing the imperial decree. He kept wondering what the man was planning with that horrific expression. She was absolutely sure he was plotting against his stepfather again. But the only reason for that expression was that it was so damn hard to write with that brush. Taking a deep breath, the emperor ignored the comment about the girl's speed and turned to ask for help with writing something. Before the girl could even answer, he put his hand on her shoulder and ordered her to sit there. In confusion, he said he didn't know what decree he wanted to write. He explained that this decree stripped all two family descendants of their surnames, reducing them to commoners. The girl was shocked, unable to understand why the man exiled his own family. He questioned why a servant like her would have to write such a thing. Tucci asked for the easiest way to lose points in the system. And the system explained that it was to get rid of the two family descendants. Since Tusa had significant military influence, this move would make him look like a cruel tyrant and be perfect for his plan. He excitedly said he'd be seen as a bully in this world and make everyone attack him. He asked why she hesitated, forcing her to apologize and start writing. Later, he casually explained that he did this just to make the game even harder to satisfy his curiosity. Placing his hand on the girl's face, he said that with this decree, he was now a man without family support, alone, and possessing the reputation of a cruel tyrant. And of course, he would be the one to deliver this news to Xiao Zhou himself. He said she could see this information as a gift. Poor Shu, who had suffered all his life, was receiving a gift for the first time. While Tucci was eager for her to fulfill this duty, the girl couldn't help but enjoy it, even though she knew she was being tricked. The scene then shifted to Xiao Zhou's manor. He knocked, and the man opened the door and asked what was happening. The girl who entered explained she had info on Tucci and that he signed an edict. When all members of both families were stripped of their royal titles, our two ministers' faces turned as white as a sheet. Xiao Zhou turns to Qingyuan in a rage. He says he planned to put another Xiao on the throne, but this last move ruined the whole scheme. Qingyuan turns to the girl and questions the source of this information. The poor girl, mortified, admits that His Majesty had her write the decree herself. Xiao Zhou suddenly turns into a crazed monster, gives the girl a hard slap, and rains insults down on her. The poor girl collapses to the ground like a trash bag. Fuming with rage, the man asks if you leaked the secret. Though the girl cries out through her sobs that she would never commit such treachery, Xiao Zhou points a finger at her and accuses her of trying to ruin her own father using that brat. Qingyuan puts his arm around his partner's shoulder, reminding him to stay calm. He raises a valid point, noting that if the girl had really leaked it, she wouldn't even know the content of the decree. Xiao Zhou pauses for a moment, apologizes for his beastly behavior, says a father can make mistakes sometimes, and tries to drop the subject. Then he turns back to Qingyuan and admits his plan to replace him with a puppet prince has failed. He says their only option now is to move to the other plan, which is to gather the entire court and humiliate that bastard at the very first council meeting. Qingyuan is about to say something, but then he changes his mind and lets it go. Knowing Zhao Zhao isn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, he figures it's better to just let the guy play out his little scheme. Our dear Tui, meanwhile, thinks the decree will work while he's busy digging for gold in his nose. But the real problem is that this move is a drop in the bucket to zero out the country's points, so he urgently needs more diabolical ideas. Then he remembers how a massive empire was brought to ruins. The leader of that era completely neglected state affairs while ruling with countless corrupt ministers. But the final straw was when he forcefully seized all the women from the people and made everyone's wife his concubine. Considering the most influential people here are the court officials, seizing everyone's wives and daughters will surely infuriate them and provoke an attack. He's literally falling in love with this plan. They'll lose a ton of points while still having a good time. It's two birds with one stone. He turns to his servant and orders Zhao Zue and Qin Yuan to be brought before him immediately. A short while later the two show up, and our guy spreads his arms wide, talking about how much he missed his ministers. While Qin Yuan remains respectful, Zhao Zue plops down and says since he's taken over the throne, it's time to meet the court. The fat man is secretly excited. She thinks if she can turn the whole palace against Tue, the boy's hands will be tied. Tue thinks holding such an important meeting would be logical and correct, which is exactly why he doesn't want to do it. He says there's too much work and excuses his lack of protocol by saying he's just become emperor. That's why he dumps all the work on his two trusted ministers. Watching everything unfold, Qin Yuan realizes how smart the boy is. Rejecting this request would ruin Zhao Zue's plan, and bringing up the issue of trust made it impossible to say no. Zhao Zun and simple tricks wouldn't work on this kid. Our boy thinks with a sneaky grin that it's the perfect time to launch the concubine plan to lose points. He blurts out that they should leave palace business for later, as there's a much more urgent matter to discuss today. He claims that as a great emperor, having only one concubine is shameful, so he's announcing he'll gather countless beautiful women to expand his harem. Even Zhao Zue is shocked that the boy is so cold-blooded, chasing after women before his father's body has even gone cold. Qin Yuan is racking his brain, trying to figure out the strategic move behind this harem plan. Tue just smirks cheekily, emphasizing that it's a state matter that needs to be handled immediately. Seeing the looks on the ministers' faces, he feels the points will flow like a waterfall. Zhao Zue agrees but notes that searching for women from all over the world would take too long. Tue says nonchalantly that it's no problem, they'll start today, but will only search within the capital. The fat man couldn't understand Tue's sudden rush. Meanwhile, Qin Yuan senses there's another motive behind why the capital was specifically chosen. Suddenly, Tue rubs his chin and says he has a brilliant idea that will save both time and effort. He announces that they will start their selections first with the relatives of the palace ministers. Qin Yuan is thunderstruck as soon as he hears this. The scene is moving outside. Zhao Zue mocks Tuinen as a fool who neglects state affairs to build a harem. He says it's perfect, that the kid is digging his own grave, and they won't even have to lift a finger. But suddenly, Qin Yuan snaps, shouting and saying enough is enough. He is shouting that if they keep disrespecting His Majesty like this, their heads will roll. As Qin Yuan tries to pull himself together, Zhao Zue freezes in shock. Qin Yuan apologizes for losing control, but insists the kid's harem plan is definitely a malicious strategy. First of all, the moment he rejected the palace meeting, he clearly showed he knew Zhao Zue's intentions. Zhao Zue argues they made this plan right before entering, so there's no way Tue could have known. Qin Yuan says this proves how advanced the boy's planning skills truly are. They didn't just reject palace life, but the harem's creation wasn't just about pleasure. It was part of a far more sinister plan. Confused, Zhao Xiao asked what these so-called holistic strategies actually meant. Qin Yuan explained that the reason that ignorant boy rejected the palace council was his blind confidence that he could rule the palace without even facing them. He took women from the ministers' families, forming alliances through marriage and effectively holding them hostage. That way, both sides would lose all their influence. When Zhao Xiao asked what they should do now, an evil smile appeared on Qin Yuan's face. All they had to do was help that boy extend the Tue family line. With arms wide open, he declared that as loyal servants, they would offer that boy a lethal opportunity to satisfy his desire. A few days later in the imperial hall, Qin Yuan informed the prince that his entire family, except for his brother, had lost their noble status. But the prince brushed the matter aside with a wave of his hand. These were details to be discussed later. His mind was entirely on that one election. Qin Yuan clapped his hands and started the long-awaited show, saying the ministers did their best to follow orders, but time was short. When the curtains opened, An army of women appeared before him. Our boy was drooling and shouting that this place is a real paradise. The air was electric as all those beauties paid their respects to His Majesty. Tui slithered behind Qingyuan like a sneaky snake and asked if any of these concubines were into fighting behind closed doors. When Qingyuan played dumb and said he didn't understand, Tui was surprised. Something was off. Even if the man didn't understand the words, the atmosphere itself said it all. And Qingyuan is your prince. He was breaking into a cold sweat, wondering whether she suspected anything. The concubines he brought were all from influential families, except for two. Fantaya in red and Yusa in purple. About 10 years ago during the Qin dynasty, the families of these two girls offended the emperor and were completely wiped out. Qingyuan saved these two girls on an impulse. For 10 years, he kept their identities a secret and raised them by his side. Inheriting the ancient abilities of their families, these girls were now perfect pawns in his hands. In a private room, Qingyuan called them. He told them that the Qingdian emperor, who slaughtered their families, was now dead. But he asked if they still held a grudge because they couldn't take revenge themselves. The girls said they're willing to die 1,000 times for revenge. For Qingyuan, this was a rare chance to place them by the prince's side without raising any suspicion. With that familiar glint in her eyes, Tui noticed how this pair practically screamed, "I'm right here." Thinking about how disproportionate these girls' physical balance was compared to each other, Qingyuan started to tremble with fear. I wonder if the kid figured it out? The system had already exposed everything. Yusha was adopted by Qingyuan, and his goal was to kill him and destroy the country. Fantaya had different features, but the goal was the same. Tui thought Qingyuan had made a brilliant move by placing these snakes and scorpions right by the tyrant's side, at his very heart, believing these girls would lead the country to its downfall. He approached them with a smile. She said they looked great and asked for their names. While one of the girls introduced herself, Tui spotted Yusha and noted that she seemed a bit too nervous. Qingyuan was dripping with sweat. The girl's withdrawn state could have revealed her true intentions. Tui gently lifted the girl's chin and whispered for her not to be afraid, that he was actually a very calm and approachable person. He kept pushing her until she said she couldn't take it anymore, and then she suddenly collapsed and fainted right there. There was a small detail the system didn't mention. Yusha can't handle being touched. She was fainting from embarrassment. While Tui stared in shock, Qingyuan stood frozen in terror. Tui just wanted to show some affection, but the girl's tolerance for physical touch was so low that he ruined the whole presentation. Qingyuan is scared her identity will be exposed, so he'll probably try to swap her out. Qingyuan knelt down and apologized, admitting that involving this woman in the race was a terrible mistake. He shouted that he deserved to die and that he'd get the girl out of there immediately. But Tui raised his hand and said it wasn't necessary. He said he really likes women who can handle even a little touch, all while grinning with the girl in his arms. Qingyuan's choices pleased him. Fantaya thought to himself that this tyrant was truly an incurable pervert. Qingyuan wiped the sweat from his forehead and thanked His Majesty. Meanwhile, Tui calmly decided he would serve the girl in her bed tonight. As Fantaya waited quietly, he swore to himself that he would soon make them pay for all of this. Suddenly Tui looked at him. Both of them looked surprised. He wondered why the girl was unhappy. Maybe he was eager to serve tonight too and drop the bombshell. Tonight, all three would get to work without wasting any time. As the scene shifts to the bedroom, Tui stares intently at these two disasters of the imperial palace. They fascinate him not just with their beauty, but with their potential to bring the country to ruin, as the system warns. They're like a godsend for the mission to bring down the kingdom. It's exactly the kind of chaos he's looking for. The ladies are well equipped after passing through the Tianyuan counter, but Tui only has the basic info. Whether their true skills are enough to raise this kingdom remains unknown. Fantaya looks back with eyes full of fear. While trying to figure out the dark scenarios inside this tyrant's head, the two beauties exchange silent looks and reach an understanding. They are ready to sacrifice themselves for their cause and endure any humiliation if necessary. Tui suddenly says the time has come, but his standing still sends Fantaya's tension through the roof. While it's suspicious he's asking for both specifically, they're confident about hiding their identities. Still, They're on guard because the man they're facing could be a devil too cunning to be fooled by kindness. Plus, they have that female factor with them, someone who's both an ally and a rival. To gain this tyrant's trust, they must prove they aren't just beautiful mannequins. The air in the room grows heavy with tension as Toei confronts them, questioning their skills. Interrupting his deep thoughts, he asks about the tyrant's special abilities once more. The long-awaited interrogation has arrived. This gets thrown out right away. She shows off her mystical talents like prophecy, star reading, and script analysis. With mastery over talismans, feng shui, medicine, and alchemy, he manages to surprise Toei. And he delivers the final blow by mentioning his more intimate sides behind closed doors. Fandeji finds this situation ironic. The girl who just fainted is putting on a show now. It's his turn. He sees from Tira's face that she isn't satisfied with Shuei's answer and wants more. Actually, he comes from a merchant family and has been a seasoned pro at the bargaining table with his grandfather since childhood. He's unmatched in finance, numbers, and reading people, but he shouldn't show it. His grandfather's praise still rings in his ears. Hide your talents so you don't become a target for the powerful. Revenge is a dish best served cold. So he must play the role of an innocent and harmless victim. Toei lies, saying she's just an ordinary and weak woman with no special skills. She hides her financial genius and puts on a mask of a naive young girl, as if she knows nothing of human psychology. He's making up a story about a poor orphan whose family died, leaving him with nothing but a massive fortune. Toei is thinking to himself. Rich orphan. This girl is literally the female version of Batman. However, seeing this as a massive opportunity to ruin the country, he sets his sinister plan in motion. As a ruler, he pretends not to stoop to his money and suggests putting the girl in charge of the treasury. The plan is simple. What does a spoiled rich girl know about managing money? He'll definitely make a total mess of everything. Putting him in charge of finances is like a perfect suicide mission to crash the economy. Then he turns to him, and since he's so knowledgeable, announces he's declaring him a national teacher. Also, he relies on Toei's poisonous mixtures for the alchemy needed to extend his life. He's sure he'll poison half the population if he interferes with medical affairs. His chaos plan is working perfectly. And he drops the bombshell. He should wear a Taoist robe. Why? Because this creep loves his costume games. The girl is frozen in horror. While Toei's nose bleeds from excitement, he's lost his mind. In this ruthless martial arts world, even the thought of building a costumed harem makes him lose himself. The scene returns to the imperial study. Toei is writing a fake decree with the forged seal. The plan to kill Tsuyu is ready. With the brother out of the way, taking care of the others will be child's play. General Zaherson suddenly appears at his service. The tyrant's eyes are filled with blood. He is ordered to take the decree to Lintong and personally witness Tusa's suicide. The general simply says, "Yes, sir," and sets off on a suicide mission to bring back a severed head. And up on the roof, an eagle glides past the moon, carrying intel to the army moving through the forest. A group in capes lying in wait in the treetops, and a mysterious girl in a butterfly mask take action. The girl gives a cool attack order but trips and face plants, totally ruining her vibe. It looks like this mess has become a habit. The others have already gotten used to it. The woman, lurking strangely among the bushes, gives that deadly order. Riding his horse, Zhao Xian suddenly notices the trap on the ground, but it's already too late. Even if he tries to change course, fate has already spun its web. They're all crashing upside down. A knight tries to stand up, but collapses after a blow to his back. Assassins dropping from trees turn the scene into a bloodbath with a rain of kunai. The man in front reminds us of Lord Xiao's order. No one should run. Zhao Xin roars in fury, asking how these rebels dare to intercept the imperial decree. A figure emerging from the shadows pauses for a moment before lunging forward, slicing through two soldiers like a hot knife through butter. But what's that? Zhao Xin sees wings in the sky. A mocking voice from above belittles your skills, and in the blink of an eye, the woman already has a blade to your throat. They're shouting that they are Zhao Xin Kun guards. Look at him, he finishes the job before she even answers. And as his head is severed from his body, one of the men seizes the box. As expected, the imperial decree was on this man. Xiaobu confirms the truth while examining the bloody paper. This is that damn edict ordering Prince Tuxia to kill himself. Doubtless, he was sent by that cruel ruler. A soldier stops an imperial decree in hesitation, asking if they've gone too far. But his answer comes in the form of a knife whistling past his head. Xiao reminds the Kun guards of their true duty. They are ghosts living in the shadows to protect the will of the late Emperor Chun. They use the bloodiest methods and act ruthlessly, but they never forget the ancient alliance with the old emperor. That great emperor who declared Tusu as the crown prince before his death. It's their duty to ensure this will is carried out. But the traitorous Tui, who usurped the throne, didn't just steal it, now he's trying to kill Tusu. Xiao tears the ferry apart and declares a definitive proof. The new emperor is now an enemy that the Kun guards must destroy. He orders the area cleared and ensures that not a single piece of information leaks out. Tusu is far to the north. Even on horseback, it would take at least 4 days to return. During this time, the traitor Tui will never know if the decree has reached its destination. And before this secret is revealed, Xiao's plan is to kill Tui. Back to Tui, he sniffs after sneezing and wonders which beautiful woman is thinking of him so passionately. We head back to the manor in 5 days. Still no news. Of course not, because Ulligan has already kicked the bucket. Sneaky Qinyuvan approaches and asks what he's waiting for. Tui meanwhile says quite casually that he expects nothing and asks why Qinyuvan is so late. Qinyuvan raises a finger, saying he has both good and bad news. Zhao Zhua interrupts and asks what could be worse than their current situation. Qinyuvan calmly explains that the fake decree plan and the attempt to kill Tsuyu have failed. In shock, Zhao Zhua grabs his collar and tells him to stop talking nonsense, but Qinyuvan firmly pushes his hand away. He reminds them they're on the same side and should stop pretending. Explaining that Zhao Xian was intercepted outside the city 5 days ago, and the one who killed him was Xiao, leader of the Kun guards. The fat guy's brain is fried. He can't figure out why the late emperor's secret unit is involved. Qinyuvan is silencing her to drop the real bombshell. Zhao believes Tuyin sent the Xiao edict that killed Shini. This makes Tui her next target. Zhao Zhua is about to scream for joy but pauses. He wonders how Qinyu knows this. Because the sand guards operate independently. Qinyuvan brushes it off, saying he has his own dark methods. He got lucky this time, and he shouldn't miss this chance. It's a perfect opportunity to restore that much-needed balance. Especially since His Majesty is hosting a grand feast with many guests today. If Xiao were to strike, tonight must be that bloody night. Seeing Xiao gliding under the moonlight, Qinyuwan thinks the guards have weakened and the plan will work perfectly. Even if the assassination fails, Tui will hate his brother, and the balance will break. Zhao Zhua is celebrating, thinking Tui will die and Tu Su will win the bid. Qinyuvan agrees this would be a great outcome, but now everything is in the hands of fate. While Zhao Zhua wonders how such a perfect plan could fail, Qinyuwan is already leaving, saying he only came to share info and asking for his leave. As he walks down the stairs, he realizes the only factor he couldn't predict was Her Majesty's reaction. Besides, the two girls placed near Tuyin hate her, and tonight is the perfect opportunity for them to strike. But no matter how talented they are, can they outsmart that cunning emperor? His only hope is that he's not being unnecessarily paranoid. Meanwhile, Tuyin's crazy cosplay party has already started in the palace hall. Right in the center, Zhang Qin captures everyone's attention. Dressed as Nezuko with bamboo in her mouth, while Cao Shu holds a sword like a saber. The girls are showering each other with compliments while others chat with them. It looks like the participants are tearing each other apart to get Tuyin's attention. Some regret not dressing more suggestively. Soft footsteps echoing through the hall. Lady Xiao, leader of the Kun guards, has arrived. He scans the hall, thinking this ruler is truly a shameless man with perverted tastes. But his mind is in a whirlwind. Because it seems like none of the women have any fighting skills. Still, competitive looks are flying between the harem candidates. Despite her sharp, lethal aura, the whispers reaching her ears were just nonsense. Gossip claiming her revealing clothes showed how ambitious she truly was. A woman in green started praising Zhao's outfit, calling it creative. But in the savage arena of my harem, family power was the only thing that truly mattered. Xiao wanted to cut down those gossiping women right then and there, but he grit his teeth and held back. Because his prey was a much bigger catch. Suddenly, the crowd's screams shook the sky. Because Her Majesty had made her entrance. As Chui rocked the scene with a cool entrance, the girls in costumes froze in shock. But for other competitors, it was a different story. The emperor blew them a kiss, declaring his love for them all. The women responded to this forced gesture with a smile. But Chu Yun's eyes caught a strange detail in the crowd. Of course it was Xiaoyi. The systems already signaled an alarm. He's the leader of the Sand Guards, and marked him as a loyal supporter of Prince Chu Su. Xiao felt those piercing eyes on him instantly and shuddered, fearing his identity might be exposed. As she subtly reached for her kunai, she thought it was time to finish off this perverted ruler. Suddenly, he jumped at His Majesty, screaming and announcing to the entire hall that his time to die had come. While the other women gasped in horror, they wondered how she dared to speak so arrogantly before the emperor. Was this brutality the true nature of what they called a costume party? 5 days ago, Chui gathered all the women and informed them about this upcoming strange competition. So naturally, one of them asked what this so-called costume party was all about. As for the emperor, he casually remarked that it was just an event where they'd wear different costumes, play games, and have fun with him. But right now, nothing made any sense. The sisters in the harem thought Xiao was an actress playing an assassin to impress the emperor. Xiao lunged forward, shouting that the man was going to die, but instead of a lethal blow, Chui blew him a heart-shaped kiss. One of the women got annoyed by this, claiming this sneaky woman was faking being an assassin because she knew men find danger a turn-on. Out of the corner of her eye, Xiao saw another woman pouncing at her. He had no intention of letting Xiao win with this cheap trick. Xiao grabbed the woman by the arm and slammed her brutally to the ground. Confused, Xiao wondered if these women had all lost their minds. They had no cultivation level, yet they still dared to attack him. Maybe this was the true face of this so-called role-playing game. Suddenly, all the women rushed at Xiao, as if driven mad to keep her from stealing the spotlight. As they grabbed and pulled at her, they were shouting that they had to protect Her Majesty from this madwoman. Pushed and shoved, Xiao simply couldn't understand why these women fought so fiercely over this man. But gripping his dagger tightly, he decided that if this was their choice, he would show them no mercy. Seeing Xianu preparing to attack, Chui was terrified. Because these women were vital resources for him to play his role as a tyrant. He immediately ordered them to stop and spare the girls. Xiao muttered to herself, thinking how this perverted ruler was bold enough to speak to her like that. The emperor asked the women if they were ready to die for him. The women cried out with smiles that they would gladly die for him. But Chui knew he couldn't die just yet. The country's scores were still very high. With an apology, he explained that the time of death had not yet come. Xiao mocked him, saying his words were nothing but empty talk. Chui took a step toward her. And he promised to leave the throne to his brother, Chu Su. He knew perfectly well she was there to kill him and clear Chu Su's path to the throne. Xiao questioned if he already knew the man's identity, and whether all this was a trap. He insisted on finding out her true intent. Raising his arms in the air, Chu-yi admitted he was tired of acting. His only goal was to enjoy life as a lazy and incompetent ruler. With a harem full of beautiful women, the throne meant nothing, and he was more than ready to hand this burden over to someone more capable. The system sent an instant notification, announcing that this conversation triggered a special story route leading to the country's destruction. For this to happen, a massive army must appear at the capital's gates. And he should have handed the throne to a general. If his plan worked, he'd lose 1,000 points and drop to 0. But Xiao suspected he was lying. Besides, he knew that no one in this world, especially a pervert like that, could resist such immense power. She told him to forget it in a cold tone. Whether he was serious or not, he was going to kill him and hand the throne over to Chu Su with his own hands. Chu Yu was surprised by the woman's endless killing intent and tried to strengthen his persuasion. He warned that if he died here, Chu Su's reputation would be tarnished, and he wouldn't be seen as a legitimate emperor. Everything she did came from her deep love for her brother, Chu Su. The scene shifted, drifting into a memory of the late emperor. The former emperor once asked Chu Su if he would be a good ruler after subduing the north. As for Chu Su, he said that his knowledge and military talent would make him remembered as a wise ruler for generations. But he noted with sadness that his talent was only fit for conquest, and the dynasty's future had no need for such a ruler. Chu Su argued that an emperor like him would always be necessary. The former emperor turned away and admitted he knew his time was short, but that it wasn't a bad thing for the dynasty. The heir he truly wanted didn't have to be talented. He could even be lazy or indifferent, as long as they are tolerant and choose peace over success and greed. Meanwhile, Xiao always believed that the true heir should have been Prince Chu Su. But based on the late emperor's words, Chui seemed to be a better fit for this role. Shaken, Xiao grew angry with himself. It's not like they'd fall for a few fancy words. The true owner of the dynasty, that legitimate heir, was none other than Tizudin. Our girl had sworn an oath once. Chui was going to drag him by the scruff of the neck before Tizudin, and he would let the true heir decide their fate personally. The order was issued, head to Lintong immediately, and that abdication ceremony would be held exactly as planned. As for Chui, it couldn't have been any better. With that ominous system warning, the story was finally back on track. Everything was going smooth until someone suddenly stood in their way. Standing before them was Chu Tixiao, holding a glowing talisman with that annoying, questioning look on his face. He was looking at me like, "Who the hell are you to kidnap the emperor?" The purple aura radiating from the man stunned everyone and left them in complete shock. Our Suk and Tuyin had such confident looks on their faces, as if they were ready to conquer the world. But his head was a mess like a crowded marketplace. The poor guy was wondering what the hell he was doing. While he tried to grasp the mess he was in, Tao Ju leaned in and tried to calm him down, explaining how Xiao could turn the place into a living hell with those paper talismans. The girl had an obsessed look in her eyes as she told that maniac assassin they'd never be defeated and would never give Tui to anyone. But our boy's thinking, when did I ever ask for protection from these lunatics? He was shouting as the scene fades to black, and we flash back to that famous night. Tian Yuan, the Lord of Shadows, is seen making dark plans right under Tu Yin's nose with these two angels of death he smuggled into the palace. Xiao was foaming at the mouth, saying he couldn't wait to take that perverted bully's head and avenge his family. But Tian Yuan cut in with that ice-cold voice. To kill? It's that simple. For us, death alone is not enough. We need real destruction. Their real target wasn't just one man, but to tear down the entire dynasty. And the irony was, for this to happen, Tu Yin had to keep breathing. The girls were frozen in shock. Because Tian Yuan started explaining all the stupid ways Tu Yin has been acting until now. When Tuzu was in charge of the army, he was the one who kept Tu Yi sitting there like a wooden puppet. And now he was airing all the dirty laundry. Xiao asked naively. So you're saying I should play the concubine and wrap this man around my finger to bring down the empire? Tian Yuan smirked, but then his expression turned serious. That was the plan, but that cursed seat they call a throne messed with Tu Yin's head. The man's changed. That stupidity was just a mask. The guy's become so unpredictable it's impossible to tell what he'll do next. So he's a total mystery. Their mission was to find his true weakness. It was the first time Xiao had seen his master so tense, perhaps even afraid. Unsure if the man's trembling was from fear or a morbid excitement, he turned to the clever girl, Tao Zhu. Xiao was a monster in alchemy and combat, but his brain was smaller than his muscles. So the job of adaptation and mental exercise was left to the smart girl. One was the brains, the other was the brawn. These two deadly weapons were perfect for the most critical and bloody phase of the plan. Tu Yi and Prince Tu Zhu should never have met. And returning to the present, Tao Shu chuckled, celebrating that his master was right. Tu Yinin's clumsy act was absolutely an Oscar-worthy performance. He knew she came from Xianu and kept thinking she led us into a trap. He thought he'd set up an evil chessboard, letting her get close to reach Tu Zhu and take revenge on the ministers. But there was one small detail Tu Yinen didn't know. Tian Yuan had already seen that move and let those two agents into his inner circle, his most private domain. While Tui scrambled to stop the duel, Tao Shu's unsettling laughter echoed, but then suddenly, behind him, he felt a chilling presence. Tao Zhu's whistling like nobody's watching, but does he think Tuyi's gonna fall for that? He gets it right away. Since these girls are Tian Yuan's puppets, they'll never let him leave the throne to Tu Zhu. But this chaos is exactly the opportunity Tu Yin's looking for. To tear the empire down, Xiao Jun must take it in. The man's expression suddenly turns psychopathic. Sheyan's eyes light up when she remembers that major weakness. As she pulls back and tries to recover, Tui slips in from behind and grabs her waist. He tilts his chin up and says a great leader like himself doesn't need concubines for protection. His ego is through the roof. Xiao turns red instantly, tries to speak, but faints from excitement. Tui chuckles, wanting him to take the opportunity. With the opportunity right there, Xiao pauses, confused. He thinks this bully is definitely up to no good again. Tui pesters the girl and asks what she's waiting for. With no other choice left, Xiao decides to take this guy out first and worry about the rest later. Tui is over the moon finally getting what he wanted, but the moment he approaches, Xiao collapses. But Tui doesn't know the girl has a hidden secret. When he loses consciousness through physical contact, any woman who touches him becomes a target that must be eliminated. The girl, coming to her senses, glares at the others with death in her eyes. It approaches slowly, spreading its dark and suffocating aura around. Without hesitation, he completes the hand seals and activates a third-level fire spell, preparing for the massacre. The fireball in his hand is growing to a massive size. Xiao trembles with fear, while Taza stands frozen by this insane power. Tui realizes if Xiao dies, all his plans will fail. He rushes forward in a panic, pushes her aside, and saves the day. As he yells for retreat, the released attack causes a massive explosion in the palace, shaking everything. And amidst all that chaos, somehow their lips meet. Wait, what is this now? Cliché romantic comedy anime from the 2000s? Xiao is turning as red as a tomato from embarrassment. Just as he's about to yell at her, he hits his head hard on the floor and passes out. As smoke rises, both remain lying on the ground. A total disgrace. While Xiao stands frozen as if his brain has been formatted, Tui suddenly bursts onto the scene. But what is that? The damned system just slapped him in the face, saying the current event failed. Just when you think it's all over, the system kicks in a new event, called Circle of Pillars with a devious grin. A trigger? A bloodthirsty assassin drawing a knife in the main hall. And a third party with healing abilities stepping in to try and protect him. Tui catches on right away, of course. If he defeats this assassin, the system will lock in a full 1,000 national power points for him. At that moment, Tui's world collapses, and the light in her eyes literally fades away. Inside, he's screaming. What kind of nonsense is this? He's outraged, saying, I'm trying to crash the country, you're giving me 1,000 points, are you mocking me? Standing aside, Xiao is hypnotized by that strange aura he's giving off. Even with 2 master warriors knocked out, this girl's still going strong. Now he understands much better why Tian Yuan was trembling in fear of this crazy version of Tui. A little later, Xiao begins to regain consciousness in the room. Tui glides up to him, like a predator closing in on its prey. The poor girl says, Where am I? Who am I? Look at that confused face. When he sits up and asks where he is, Tui casually and indifferently says that this is his own bedroom. She instantly goes on the defense, and labels him a shameless pervert. While looking for the connection to the fur, the girl drops the classic line. You'll never have my body. Tui rolls her eyes, looking as if to say, Girl, have you lost your mind? It reminds him that if it weren't for her, Tian Yuan would have sent him to the other side by now, and that he owes her his life. Let's rewind a bit. Right at the start of the fight, the door was kicked open with a bang. Tian Yuan surged in with his army, turning the whole place into a battlefield. Tell your soldiers to gut the assassin and protect his majesty. He gave the order and began apologizing profusely, kneeling before Tui in tears. The crazy loyalist wanted his head chopped off for putting his majesty at risk. Tui brushed it off, saying, There's not even a scratch on you, don't exaggerate, son, get up. I'll get that assassin and make him talk, Tian Yuan. Trying to find out who was behind it, Tui shouted in panic. Stop right there, don't touch it. He came up with some nonsense excuse from deep within his brain to save the situation. He shocked everyone by picking the girl up and saying, This peanut is so cute, I want her with me. Tian Yuan's brain was fried, of course. Sir, this woman is a walking death machine. I was trying to warn you not to nourish a viper in our bosom. But Tui said with a wicked grin. That's the exciting part. On top of that, she played with the man's pride by asking if he was afraid of an unarmed, defenseless woman. Tian Yuan immediately backed down, bowing his head and saying, Forgive me, your majesty, I wouldn't dare. Tui ordered Yuya to watch over her sister and cleared the room of the crowd. Now he's lost in thought, plotting his next move. But the first mission was a disaster. Keeping this female assassin alive could have actually opened a huge door of opportunity. Because this girl could return to Tusu and help destroy the country from within. Just as I'm thinking about this, Xiao snaps. You're too close, I can't breathe. Cut me, carve me, torture me, but stay out of my personal space, she says, pushing his head away. He says he already killed the envoy sent to Tusu, so Tui should execute him right then and there. And now he's making threats. Tusu is coming soon to settle the score with you. Tuin has no idea what's going on, of course. He's acting all innocent, asking when he ever sent men to kill my brother. The girl says don't pretend, you scumbag. In a know-it-all mode. Turns out there was a fake decree. He immediately figures out the girl's stepfather is behind this. Tui is analyzing the situation. Shaolin can tell from the look on her face that she knows something but is likely being manipulated by her stepfather. This is a golden opportunity for Tui. A legendary opportunity to fuel the hatred toward him and play the villain role. While Xiao looks on in fear, Tui starts the show. He covers his face with his hands and bursts into that famous psychopathic Joker laugh. Oh right, I sent that edict, how could I forget? He says, playing the part. While she stares like an idiot, wondering why this guy is confessing, Tui grabs a decorative sword off the wall and lunges at him. He screams that my brother has a massive army under his command and you must leave him to me. The girl wonders why His Majesty takes responsibility for every damn thing. Sending just one assassin to kill my brother Tui, also known as Tugyai. That would be so boring, he says, making his intentions clear. He swings the sword, saying, I want to play a much more balanced, much bloodier game with him. Xiao looks like he's about to wet himself though. Crack. The sword isn't cutting the flesh, but the chains holding the girl. When Xiao asked why you didn't kill me, you maniac. Our guy killed the envoy. Now he says you're the mailman. You will deliver the new decree. Our father may have raised Tosu as a hero and an heir to the throne. But in my eyes, he's just a brute force fool. He puts on that devilish grin and says, I'm not afraid of him. And he drops the bombshell. I will not only strip him of his titles and his powers. I'll turn him into an ordinary, miserable peasant. Xiao is in shock. Her eyes are wide with shock. It looks like the artist shifted the perspective and drew eyes 10 feet apart. He can't believe his ears. Tui, go tell my brother that. He's challenging anyone who objects to his decision to come and take back what's theirs from him. I'll be waiting for him right here in the capital, on my throne. Man, I really played the part. That was an Oscar-worthy performance. He rejoices inside, convinced that the girl hates him. But right at that moment, doesn't the system kick in and start the rebellion arc? To start the story, a prince with a strong army was needed. The system user, meaning the emperor, was supposed to order the prince's powers to be revoked. If the prince acts on impulse and revolts at this early stage, the host will lose 1,000 points. And if the prince storms the castle and destroys everything, the host will lose exactly 10,000 points. Tui is jumping for joy. Losing 10,000 points means ending up in the negatives and finally breaking free. Meanwhile, Xiao looks at that crazy expression on his face and thinks this emperor has truly lost his mind. But maybe that's a good thing. With the chance of losing the throne to Tui growing, our fake tyrant Tui let the assassin walk away scot-free. The poor girl was frozen in shock. Why did His Majesty release the killer and take the blame for his father? Tui wasn't stupid. He figured out how things worked. He couldn't just rely on system events. Because last time, instead of losing points, he won and totally cheated US. He had to use the ministers around him like pawns. When her eyes caught Shu, she remembered her father's famous palace meeting proposal. The young woman tensed up when she felt eyes on her. Until she called your name, Tui. The emperor offered her a fake apology since all his attention was on Chao Shu. Shu couldn't help but say how creepy it was to hear him talk so humanely. Toy approached him and told him to relax. After all, she mentioned before that she could spill everything to her father. But this time, he had a new message to deliver. Toei would personally attend that famous palace meeting. He wanted to arrange the organization himself. Just setting the date was enough. Shu agreed, and in the blink of an eye, the big day arrived. While everyone gathered in the hall waiting, Chao Shu's arrival was announced, and the crowd welcomed him with great respect. Our chubby minister floated in cheerfully. He put on a show of humility, accepting the praise and saying formalities were unnecessary. But something was strange. He didn't miss the lack of enthusiasm on their faces. Something about this was fishy. He soon noticed that Tian Yuan's seat was empty. A man approached and whispered that Tian Yuan sent word of being ill. Supposedly he's not in the mood. Chao Shu laughed internally, thinking Tian Yuan was underestimating his plans. He gave a diplomatic answer, telling the messenger that Tian Yuan should take care of his health, and that it was fine for him not to come today. But Chao Shu had already made his decision. Today, he would first crush Tui in court to assert his authority, then deal with the others. Just as I was planning to deal with Tian Yuan, a new announcement was made. The emperor had arrived. Chao Shu turned, and everyone bowed respectfully. Tui burst inside with him. People started whispering. Since when did an emperor ever attend palace meetings? Plus, he wasn't alone. The concubines were right behind him. Protocol is out the window. Tui turned around and dropped the bombshell. If they couldn't handle just one concubine, they were in big trouble. That was the moment the ministers started to panic. They put their hands to their heads in horror at the sight they saw. He rounded up every single woman from our crazy palace and brought them over. Some fainted from shock, while others wept for the late emperor. As for the women, they were asking if this was the Grand Assembly, as if they were on a tourist trip. They would tug on the elderly minister's beards and play around. Tui laughed and said the girls were very curious about this experience. That's why he was sure no one would object. Gao Shu thought the kid had lost it, that he'd completely lost his mind. Another minister was in terror. Even the maid sent by her family was there. What a disgrace this was. He asked if he brought His Majesty here to humiliate them. Zhao Zhu intervened, reminding them that bringing the harem to such a serious place violated the rules. Tui, on the other hand, was quite calm. He told them not to worry, that he meant no harm. He was just a foolish leader who wanted to enjoy his harem wherever he went, and that was all. Zhao Zhu didn't know what to say. Tui knew well that no matter how shameless and direct he was, they couldn't do a thing. Then he turned to one of the ministers and asked if they would prepare seats for so many guests. Small wooden stools were immediately lined up on the ground. Giggling, the women said they wanted to sit near the throne. Tui promised to arrange it better next time. Right then, that sweet notification sound came from the system. He was tearing down the country's traditions. 500 points were deducted for breaking the rules of conduct. He was over the moon with joy. Creating chaos in the palace was the best strategy. His plan was working like clockwork. It would destroy all respect and reset the points to 0. Chao Zhu decided to swallow this insult for now. The kid was going to learn his lesson soon anyway. Tui then turned to the ministers and asked if they had anything to report. The ministers knew the real theater was just beginning. Because Lord Cao was about to make his move against the young emperor. Chao Zhu stepped forward and announced that he has an important matter to present. He said some interesting omens appeared on the eastern island, and he's here to present them. When Tui asked what the omens were, the chubby man smiled smugly. The omen was none other than the divine beast. He said blue dragon, but honestly, this thing looked more moss green than blue. The old wolf claimed this symbol represents the rise of the dynasty. Tui glanced sideways, not looking very excited. Chao Shu was surprised. Why didn't the child rejoice at such a wonderful omen, or had he caught wind of the plan? Tu suggested Yinan examined the divine beast closely. When he clapped his hands, a giant green claw entered, and the hall suddenly fell into chaos. While the ministers fled for their lives, Tui looked curious. 2 men struggled to enter. They were trying to restrain that monster creature that looked like a crocodile. When the creature stood right in front of him, Tui couldn't help but burst out laughing. Do they call this the divine sky dragon, or is there something wrong with our eyes? It's clearly a lizard-like freak who fell into a bucket of paint. Chao Shu is desperate for Tuyin to admire this painted fraud. With cold sweat trickling down his forehead, he waited to see how the boy would react to this spiritual creature. Right at that moment of tension, one of the system's special events kicked in like a flare. There was only one condition for this event to be triggered. Someone linked to the throne had to present a monster to the emperor under the guise of a gift. Besides, this creature must have been part of a massive lie. So they basically had to give a completely different name to something obvious. To finish the event and snag those sweet 2,000 points, Tuyin had to pretend the ministers convinced her this thing was real. With an evil grin, Tui thought Chao Shua had once again brought him great surprises that would lose him points as usual. Now, it was his turn to take the stage. The giant faux dragon Tui stood there, opened its mouth, and roared. While keepers struggled to restrain the animal, some ministers bit their lips to keep from laughing at the comedy. At that moment, Tui began commenting on this so-called celestial dragon, implying the creature didn't look very realistic. This is exactly the kind of pass Chao Shu wants. Let the manipulation games begin. Tui stepped it up, insisting it must be a celestial dragon, and asked the ministers if they recognized this divine creature. Of course, this move was exactly Chao Shua's sinister plan. The other sycophant ministers immediately began to chime in and agree. One person even stooped so low as to pull out a book and claim his ancestors saw a sky dragon that looked just like this painted reptile. Everyone rushed to congratulate Chao Zhiyu, saying it was a great blessing to have such a beast. This was Bu Chao Zun's strategy to unite the palace against Tui and isolate him. That way, he would slowly erode the emperor's authority. But for Tui, whose only goal was to sweep up those 2,000 points, business was booming, everything was perfect. He was just about to start praising it when someone suddenly cried out that this creature was disgusting. Astonished, the emperor asked who had committed such an insolence. When he looked toward the source of the sound, he saw that brave girl coming out of his harem. The girl was saying that such an ugly freak of a creature could never become a magnificent celestial dragon. Tui started to tremble. Why did these women have to step in and mess things up at the most critical moment? To smooth things over, Shuya quickly called out and asked if she wanted to say anything about it. But Shu stood there, rooted to the spot like a bewildered duckling. He couldn't understand what the emperor expected of him. Tui said he wants to hear what you think of that freak in the hall, and whether it's a real celestial dragon. Shu hesitated. The emperor had always turned a blind eye to her spying for Zhao Zhu. So why was he forcing us to pick a side now? Maybe he thought that at the end of the day, the girl posed no threat to him. The man constantly made her choose between him and her stepfather. And right then, it clicked in his mind. Zhao Zhu remembered how she used it. He realized the emperor was always by his side and made his decision. He fixed his eyes on Zhao Zhu with a sharpness that would decide his fate. Adam was already on edge, but he was sure he'd support his stepdaughter's plans. But the girl opened her mouth and asked that question. How could it be? Such a loathsome creature could be considered a holy beast. Zhao Zhu was thunderstruck. The girl screamed at the top of her lungs that Zhao Zhu was trying to deceive the emperor, which was nothing short of treason. Zhao Zhu never expected to be stabbed in the back like this, especially by his own daughter. Tui, rolling his eyes in frustration, wondered why she hadn't betrayed him, trying to grasp why she suddenly turned against her father. Her eyes shining with excitement, Shu turned to the other women and asked if they would join her. All the women in the harem began to cry out in unison that this four-legged reptile had nothing to do with the dragon. Zhao Zun's treachery absolutely deserved execution. In shock, Zhao Zhu frantically turned to Lord Zhaoya, claiming his illegitimate daughter sent to the palace incited this rebellion. Lord Zhao angrily rolled up his sleeves, shouted, impudent, at his own daughter, and lunged toward her. He questioned his upbringing, asking how he could be so rude to High Lord Zhaoya. But a voice rising from the women struck him, saying his father was the truly insolent one. After all, Chinan Cave wasn't Zhao Zhu's private property. Besides, his father had tossed him into the palace like trash, simply because he was illegitimate and didn't trust the young emperor one bit. Lord Zhao froze at these venomous words from his unwanted daughter. The other ministers were worried when they saw Lord Zhao could barely stand. The poor man couldn't understand how his daughter had become so disobedient. At that moment, the women were hatching a conspiracy as if they had prearranged it. Someone stepped forward and exposed how his father drained the city treasury and made the people's lives a living hell. Another one turned to Tui and said his father forcibly seized the lands of the poor. Before long, all the women in the harem began singing like birds, reporting their own families to Tui. Zhao Zhuo was trying to understand how the entire state apparatus was defeated by the harem in this palace. Qin Yiwen was right. Damn it, he was right. He should have never underestimated this kid. Behind that terrifying harem wall, Zhao Zhu looked at Tui with eyes full of hatred and fear. Tui had already drawn the knife in his hand. Zhao Zhuan's blood ran cold. He was terrified. Was this emperor really the chosen one? Tui stepped forward, and at that moment, a pure gold dragon appeared in Zhao Shua's eyes, roaring toward him. The fat guy was sweating bullets, thinking he'd die because he listened to some woman. But Tui had already swung his sword like an executioner. But Zhao Zhu stands frozen like a statue. The whole hall is in shock as the palace women stifle their screams of horror with their hands. Wow, our guy just sliced that huge Komodo dragon in one move. Or was it called the Divine Dragon? And then he marched upon Lord Zhao. He belittles the man, saying it's not worth ruining our bond over a ridiculous lizard like this. Turns out he didn't need to be afraid. No matter how strong it is, it would just mow down everything in its path like this. Then, as if mocking everyone's intelligence, he says just forget about today. Let's act as if today's council meeting never happened. Then he asks Lord Zhao for his opinion. The fat guy bites his tongue in fear and can only say Her Majesty is right. But soon after, his world comes crashing down, and he's absolutely devastated. Because the damn system counted the mission as a success since Zhao Zun's plans fell through. His authority in the palace peaked. Another 2,000 points added to the bag. It's 2,900 in total. Ours is looking at his hands and moaning. It's all that woman's fault for bringing that damn harem. In the back, the woman wonders why he's sulking and how he made Zhao Zhu tremble like that. He walks up and asks him if he's proud of what he's done. After pausing for a second, he puts on that evil, bone-chilling smile and says, "It'll do." But it would have been better if she caught his drift right away. What is it with this woman? Is she slow or what? He knows she did the right thing, but he wishes she'd handled it without waiting for a sign from us. Fortunately, His Majesty can rest easy. Next time he'll strike like lightning. The real disaster for Tui is that this destroyed Zhao Zhu's charisma. No good will come from that guy. He'll just cost us points. He'll have to rely on that old giant Qingyuan. He immediately rolls up his sleeves for a new imperial decree. But the woman is sharp. She immediately asks for the plan. This time, they're going to make Qingyuan the Grand Chancellor. Before he can even ask if there's an objection, she's already at the table, dancing with pen and paper. He knows full well that the office of Grand Chancellor ranks even higher than the viziers. Since the Great Kaiyun Empire was founded a century ago, only the legend Wei Xinglu has been able to sit on this throne. With Zhao Zhuo weakened, the field was left to Qingyuan. The woman thinks this is a devious trap set for the man. Maybe it's a move against him. Or who knows, maybe it's a strategy. To pit two tigers against each other and slip away. Ours stamps the seal on the paper, but what's that? Suddenly, he just freezes. The message from the system says your brother is gathering an army in Beijing. The first stage of the Jin Rebellion event is complete. The Shakti, 2,000 points cleared. You only have 900 left. He instantly starts laughing like a total lunatic. It's screaming that those damn palace points are finally going up in smoke. He keeps stamping the paper, laughing like he's lost his mind. The scene changes. Half a month later, we're on a battlefield full of corpses. This is the southern front. Everywhere is looted and full of supplies. Some guy's drilling into the car. Fluid is gushing out of it. He's giving the soldiers the good news. These are military rations. No more hunger. That man with the red streak in his hair is nearby on his horse. General Wang Jian approaches and addresses him as, Your Majesty. They've been advancing freely in the south for 10 days. Not a single royal soldier even stood against them. Everything is going as smooth as butter. But the battles with the Longxing units have started to feel too easy. And the commander gets suspicious, sensing a trap. The redhead says, "Tell it properly." The man is explaining, Longxing. Li Changyu is leading their troops. These are elite infantry, but instead of fighting, they dropped their supplies and ran without looking back. The soldiers are carrying loot, but General Wang seems to be right. Xiao Lai, Tu Yinan says she's a total snake, a devious devil. He must be plotting something with Qinyuan. Our guy starts cracking up. He knows perfectly well that this was intentional. Clearly, he's figured out his own brother's strategies. Look who's entering the stage now, my friends. The scene shifts to a strange house. The old man is sitting there, asking the boy for the rest of the text. The kid's stuck on the friend from a distance part. His brain is fried. He thinks it over and drops pearls of wisdom. Friends coming from afar must be punished. The old man slaps him right on the cheek. You're way too stupid for a crown prince. The dynasty can't be entrusted to you. It roars. But the kid's talking back to his dad. His brain is sharp as a tack. How many soldiers has he butt heads with since yesterday? And he came out unscathed. Dad is silent. She says, no food for you, just for today. And you're going to copy the lessons 100 times. The boy slumps at the table, whining that he wishes there was something to eat, when a stone hits his head. Our lead calls out to Tugsu, asking if he got another scolding from the old man. He didn't understand why his older brother's life as the crown prince was harder than his own. Tugsu turns and says, "That's exactly why I'm jealous of you." Tugsu's father wanted to engrave his son's name in history and make him a legendary, wise commander. But Tugyai only responded to these dreams with a smirk. Because what was the point of sitting on the imperial throne if you couldn't enjoy life? As for his brother, he hated ruling the country. His only concern was swinging his sword on the battlefield. But if he was to become a war survivor, why was he born with that name? Still, as the prince and greatest heir to the great kingdom, he couldn't break the chains of fate. Though Tugyai appeared lost in thought, the gears in his head were already turning. The solution was actually much simpler than they thought. He would ease the burden on his brother, who would one day take the imperial throne himself. He would even strip that noble surname from his brother if necessary. That way, his brother could live as he pleased without any worries or cares. Meanwhile, Tusa gripped the horse's reins and charged forward like the wind, thinking to himself that Tugyai had never changed and had always been a total moron. He ordered his army to begin a death march toward the city of Kaiping. But in the capital, things were getting complicated. Meishu tried to get rid of Qinyuan, saying Her Majesty didn't want to see anyone's face. Qinyuan was in a state of panic. He was shouting that enemy troops were within 800 miles and he needed to talk urgently. Shu was saying that Tugyai knew perfectly well about this situation. But the emperor had absolute faith that Qinyuan would handle this crisis with ease. After all, he finally held the strings of the legendary Longshan guards. So naturally, all responsibility and the price of his head now belonged to him. As High Chancellor, shouldn't he have shared the burden on Your Majesty's shoulders? It was his job to solve the problems. A seed of doubt was planted in Qinyuan. Or was Tugyai trying to pin all the guilt and failure on him? He cried out at the top of his lungs, protesting that they had underestimated Tugsu's armies. The man before them was a monster, renowned as the invincible great general. Shu calmly whispered not to worry, saying Tugyai was aware of everything. Qinyuan would only check the rear, he would never take any risks. According to the plan, the soldiers would show off some heroism in front of the enemy, then pull a fast one and retreat. Even if they lost, it would be considered a glorious defeat. Qinyuan's brain was about to fry. He couldn't believe what he was hearing and was trying to make sense of it. If winning or losing really doesn't matter, what was Her Majesty's true intent behind this madness? Shu walked away without a backward glance, saying Her Majesty was eagerly awaiting the good news, and slammed the door in his face. Inside, he started stretching to relax his body. He was complaining about how exhausting it was to act in front of that old codger. Crossing her arms, Tui asked if the plan was going smoothly, and the answer was yes. Your instructions were followed strictly, ensuring Qin took command and retreated cowardly. As Tui settled in for his massage, he wondered what chaos would erupt when the northern troops reached Kaiping. The results were unimaginable. In such a critical life-or-death moment, how could he entrust everything to someone like Qin and say winning was unimportant? Deep down, he certainly had a preference for victory or defeat. Oh, he wanted to lose with a heart's desire. It would be magnificent if they lost the war. The reason he staged this whole act was because his troops were the second best in the Grand Chan Empire, so damn it, there was a risk they might accidentally defend successfully and win the war. That's why he ordered Qin to lead them into a flat, defenseless terrain if they were forced to fight. That way, they'd have no advantage left and would be utterly defeated. All pieces on the chessboard were in place. The Jinna rebellion event would be completed smoothly, and Tusu would be consumed with rage. He began to laugh like a madman. The maid recognized this demonic smile. This time, what awaited Qin would be worse than anything imaginable. Meanwhile, Qin paced alone, thinking about the strange responsibility the leader gave him and the nonsense about the result not matching. Suddenly, someone yelled your name and started running toward you. Zhao came in fuming with rage, claiming her playing sick on the trial day was no coincidence, but all according to plan. He grabbed the man by the collar and shouted to his face that he'd conspired with Tui against him. Qin shoved Zhao Shuda's arm away, telling her to stop the nonsense, as he never had any secret plan with Tui. But the fat man wasn't satisfied. He was demanding answers. He wanted to know how Qin was promoted to Grand Chancellor the moment he lost his position. Qin answer was ready. The prince had done this just to make them tear each other apart. Plus, Tusu was charging toward Kaiping, dealing death as he came. Now was no time for cockfighting. But for Xiao Shu, this was no small matter at all. Especially when he knew about the women Qin planted around Tui, one becoming the national consultant, and the other managing the treasury. Was he going to claim he didn't join forces with Tui? In a menacing tone, he whispered that he knew the true identities of those two women she'd adopted years ago, and he was absolutely certain Qin didn't want Tui to find out this secret. Qin expression suddenly turned ice cold. He paused for a second to calm down, understanding Lord Zhao better now. Maybe his previous actions had caused a misunderstanding, but now he was going to fix it. As he reached inside his shirt, the fat man nervously asked what he was trying to do. What Qin took out was a glowing golden tiger seal. Amid bewildered looks, he said this was exactly what he thought. This talisman was the absolute power to command the 30,000 soldiers in Kaiping. Zhao extended the seal to Shuya, offering her command. There was a brief silence. The fat man recalled what happened while the old emperor was still alive. Who did Yesen entrust the seal to before dying? On the other side stood the tiger talisman. To maintain the delicate balance between ministers, the seal of Yi was entrusted to Zhao Zun. This would make him the emperor's right hand in decision-making. The tiger talisman was given to Tian Yuan, who was tasked with commanding the emperor's armies. Thanks specifically to these two toys, both managed to maintain some influence even after the emperor died. But due to Tuan's cunning tactics, Zhao lost Zhu's support and was now as helpless as a cornered rat. Tian Yuan was the only threat to the emperor because of the tiger amulet he held. Tui. That's exactly why he wanted to name him Grand Chancellor and send him to his death against the northern troops. The man looking at the talisman knew that what he held in his hand was actually a bomb with the pin pulled. It made more sense to use this at least to balance Zhao Ziyu, acting before he did something stupid. But Zhao Zun's face soured, questioning what kind of schemes were at play again. He knew for a fact that if he accepted that damn amulet, he'd have to face the mad Tusu in the north. Given how crazy Tusun is, he had zero chance of winning. He cast aside the talisman and shouted that if Tian Yuan was going to send someone to their death, it had to be him. Suddenly Tian Yuan paused, the air turned ice cold, and he spoke Zhao's name in a serious tone. Did he really think he was making this offer out of the goodness of his heart? He had to remind Jianu of the miserable situation she was in. The imperial seal had been shattered. He had no credibility left with the authorities, and even his inner circle had sold him out. Right now, he didn't have a single card left to play. Confused, Zhao Zhuo asked if he was being threatened. After a brief silence, Tian Yuan picked up the tiger seal and stated he was only speaking the bitter truth. Holding the tiger talisman was risky. But it was the only move Zhao could make to survive. Talking about dirty games was nonsense because the strategy was clear as day. Since Zhao hasn't fully lost his seat yet, having this charm would let him manipulate the Longjiang troops as he pleased. And Tian Yuan forced that metal piece into his friend's mouth. For the sake of their past friendship, she whispered that this would be his last chance. Waving goodbye as he left, he advised him to make the most of this opportunity. As Zhao Zhuo spat out the metal scraps in disgust, he knew that leading those troops into battle was essentially signing his own death warrant. Still, Tian Yuan was right. This was the only trump card you had. The main problem was that he faced massive enemies like Tui, Tusu, and Tian Yuan. If that was the case, no one should cry over the dirt he was about to do. The scene suddenly cut to a house in flames. While a woman wailed with her child in her arms, soldiers passed them by, carrying the supplies they had looted. In the following days, villages near Kaijing were plundered under Zhao Zuo's personal orders. A peasant knelt at a soldier's feet, begging and saying they wouldn't survive the winter without food. Seeing this, Zhao Zuo shouted about how idiotic his soldiers were, unable to pull off such a simple task. They couldn't imagine how long it would have taken to gather those supplies if he hadn't ordered the villages to be burned. A soldier came and informed Zhao that military operations were complete. This soldier, named Taisher, struggled to understand why they were looting their own villages instead of fighting the rebels.